Cien Solon is the co-founder and CEO of LaunchLemonade, described like the Canva of AI apps. She's also on a mission to make sure that no one gets left behind in our time of AI. Cien, welcome to Strategy and Tragedy.
Thanks for having me, Steph. This is surreal. Like, I think it was last year where I was watching you and Andy. And yeah.
Oh my God, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was in the studio and I was like, that's fun. And now I'm here.
I'm such an idiot because I asked you if you'd ever been to those studios before. And of course, that was the first time that we met in person.
I know. I manifested this.
That is amazing. Oh, don't get me started on manifesting. We'll be here all day. That is a very cool full circle moment, actually.
Yeah.
So listeners, the Andy that Cien is referring to is Andy Ayim. Definitely go back and have a listen to that episode because, yeah, that was amazing. And yeah, of course, we had Cien as the live audience member during that recording. And now you're here across the table from me. So
honestly,
love that.
I know.
That. All right. Let's get back to you. LaunchLemonade. Give us an expanded elevator pitch. What is it exactly?
So currently, the market, the consumers, even the builders are getting frustrated and confused and overwhelmed with the amount of selection and noise around AI, what could be done, how to maximize, how to increase efficiency. But no one's really providing a platform that would allow them to monetize, learn, and mature, not just as builders, but actually as great users as well. So we built this platform where anyone, without needing technical abilities, just the time to attend our master classes, to have conversations with us, to learn and actually build monetizable AI agents.
Love that. And that really ties into your mission. I can already hear you speaking so passionately about making sure that people can actually utilize AI, monetize it. So I want to talk about the applications and implications of AI. So let's start with those applications. Can you give us some real world use cases beyond just all this kind of buzz, people talking about it? How can it actually be implemented?
The most common use case, and I've learned that these group of people are the best adapters. They weren't the earliest adapters, but you'd relate to this. But marketing agencies, marketing professionals are the best adapters of AI. They're able to create and make it work for them. So we've got agencies who are building tools for their team. So now they don't only have 5 clients, but they can have hundreds because they were able to increase their productivity. But we've also got marketeers who've built tools that they are selling to clients. So that is one application that I find very interesting. And, I hear a lot about the creator economy that's just boosting. And I think that's a really good application where everyone can build their own brands. Everyone can create a presence by utilizing AI and expanding their reach by doing more.
Yeah.
But we also have subject matter expertise in business coaching and consultancy, even in nutrition, that are building AI versions of their services and their expertise and selling it to their clients as a 24/7 pocket coach, consultant, business partner, advisor.
Interesting. All right, so let's dive into some of the specifics with that, because I just know how, you've got such a variety of different users, there's different use cases, and I'm just keen to kind of go from that the broader, the generalized, and let's kind of pick out a few specific use cases. So let's kind of work backwards. So you're saying a coach or a life consultant or something, tell us a bit more about kind of the AI version of themselves and how it can be monetized.
If you're in tech or thinking of launching your own product, the options can feel really limiting. Let's take, for example, hiring engineers can be costly and time consuming. Managing an in-house team is also expensive and can come with its own hiring headaches. Working with agencies, well, I've definitely heard my fair share of horror stories, let's be honest. That's why I'm so happy to partner with App Unite. Check them out. They're not just another dev shop, they're a product development powerhouse. How it works is their team embeds with your own. They take the time to define how their work can positively impact your key metrics, and then they set to building high-performing apps that actually scale. Whether you're in fintech, health tech, or SaaS, they don't just write code, they co-create products that grow businesses. So if you're nervous about those other options, or you're tired of delays, bad code, or agencies that just don't seem to get it, check out appunite.com/grow and let me know how you get on. All right, let's get back to the conversation.
Tell us a bit more about kind of the AI version of themselves and how it can be like monetized.
Yeah, so let's say you're a business coach. Currently, in the old world, you would have 3 clients or 5 clients that you see every month, because that's the only time that you have capacity. Like, that's the only capacity that you have. But with an AI version of yourself where you upload your frameworks, your knowledge, your ebooks, and this AI tool is now able to answer the same questions that you would have one-to-one anytime, anywhere. So now you're able to have more, and people can subscribe to that instead of booking appointments. That is definitely one way we're seeing people are utilizing AI.
And is that like do they then kind of retell that as like the light version, the more accessible price point, just to kind of get some of that expertise? There's a few kind of devil's advocate voices that's coming up for me on this. Like, one is, we're in the information age. Like, there's no shortage of information, and like most, not all of us, have access to that information. So how, like, I'm just conscious of, like, if any entrepreneurs are listening to this and like, oh, cool, okay, like, I could create this AI version of myself. Like, how much like value is it adding? How much of a market is there? Actually, because it sounds great in theory, right? It sounds like, oh, great, I get to scale up my practice. I'm going from this individual sole consultant. But I've seen how even just like being on the other side of a call and holding somebody accountable and them knowing that the person is on the other side of the Zoom and not wanting to let them down, there's like value in just that itself, which you don't have from the machines. So I'm just kind of like, I want to get your take on that, because I guess I'm just kind of like wanting to test how much of a business opportunity is there here.
Absolutely. First of all, just going back to your point, people are using it as a low ticket value or top of the funnel tool right now. But I think, as these things progress, I have no doubt that it would become a higher ticket value offering. But to answer your point, people don't buy from the machine. They still buy from you. So I think more than ever, personal brands are going to be as important as the tools that these brands build. Because in this economy where there's so much saturation, people will buy from the people.
Yeah.
And the machine is just a tool that you can utilize to add a revenue stream to your offering. So
for example, sorry to just cut you off here, but so my cogs are just turning while I'm listening to you. So for example, with my last agency, and we'll definitely talk about the marketing use cases as well, because obviously that's my background. With my marketing agency, one of my own marketing strategies for my own marketing business was to demonstrate expertise, and it was by posting, like, these are the frameworks we use, these are our tried and tested processes. I'd write thought leadership articles and blogs and things, and I put out this content where this expertise is available. So I guess where my mind has gone here is like drawing that line between this content that I'm already putting out there for my own marketing that's available, booking to have a session with me or my team and paying for that. And then I think what you're describing here, unless I'm completely mistaken, it's kind of like in between those two. And so if you're going to pay for it, does the value then become the conversational element, the always on element? Because if all that content is there, is it simply that the repackaging of all that content that's already available? Do you see what I mean?
yeah, but it's your content. It's your tried and tested data.
Yeah.
So you've got all of these, let's say, 10 years of putting all these strategies together, putting all these content together, thought leadership stuff, social media, calendars. That's your data. They're buying your data, not the AIs. So imagine you've got all of these rich data, ebooks, frameworks, and you feed that into the AI, and the AI then performs based on your tried and tested data.
Sure.
That's what your clients are going to be buying from you.
And so that's what I mean. So if that data is already out there and being published, even with like our own marketing, and I'm putting out that material, it's really the repackaging of that's the value.
No, because Yes and no.
Yeah.
The yes element is the obvious. Like obviously you are repackaging it. The no are the objectives and how the market is right now and how consumers are behaving. So there's still going to be elements of you as a subject matter expertise to add elements of a little re-strategy based on consumer behavior,
Yeah.
trends,
Yeah.
whatever is the competitors.
Yeah.
There's still nuances that you as a subject matter expertise needs to add
Adapt
into.
that to.
Yeah, exactly. Which you can't just get an AI to because they don't have the data for what is currently happening.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. It's like even with this, with the podcast, it's like someone was describing like this is just the modern day version of radio. Like, right?
Yeah.
It's like we're just sat here having a conversation, recording it and broadcasting it out to audiences. But because it's in digital format and perhaps you're listening to this on Spotify or on YouTube, as opposed to like adjusting the knob to a different FM tune into the radio station. So I think that's kind of, as I'm learning about this and kind of wrapping my head around, for me, just understanding that, I think for me, I'm just sort of, I'm obviously not putting you on the spot with this, but I'm kind of challenging the market value and how consumers are going to pay. And I'm just trying to understand kind of that value. If that information is already out there, if it's already accessible, then, you know, it's like I always say, like an encyclopedia is not a New York Times bestseller. We're in the information age. All of this stuff is out there. It's all published. But it's then, I guess, as I keep using the term wrongly or rightly, it's the repackaging, it's the reformatting, it's putting it into that different digestible format, adapting to the consumer behavior.
No, absolutely. Like I'll give you a hypothetical but concrete example of what can be done. So you've got all of these content in strategy, tragedy, and you have a certain way and style of asking questions and formatting how the conversation progresses. Now, let's say you have a following and they want to do the same thing. Like they like your style, they like the way you ask questions, they like everything that you're doing. And so you're able to repackage that into some sort of machine that would allow them to build scripts based on the subjects that they want to talk about. And that could be a low ticket value for you, like as Stephanie, who is an expert at podcasting, and people would buy. But yeah, I want to start up podcasting. I just need some sort of machine that will allow me to build the scripts, the questions, step by step guide. I can ask questions, what the lighting should be, where to go. But then I'm still a little bit insecure about my capabilities. Maybe I need that higher ticket, coaching, where Stephanie will talk to me and give me some, one-to-one tips on how to become a great podcaster. And that could be an entire business by itself.
And are you saying, is that last part like with me for real, or the AI
yeah,
version
with you
of me?
for real? So that's a high
like
ticket. Yeah.
Okay.
So that could be an example of a business anyone could do.
Okay. And what I'm also wondering in my mind is like, how much we're touching on like consumer behavior and adapting to serving the market needs. From my stance where I'm sat, it looks like AI is the one driving that as opposed to the consumer behavior. You think the opposite?
Cost is driving that. The market is driving that. There is both the technology, like it's well marketed and it's very attractive. But I think, just thinking out loud, the root of this is the cost of being able to maintain our livelihoods and our earnings. Like if there is threat of us losing our livelihoods, losing our jobs, and not be able to future-proof our careers because AI might take over, I think the driver is, that like we need money.
What I'm hearing is the cause and the solution. So marketing is one of the worst culprits at this, making consumers think they have a problem and then serving up the solution for it. One of the worst ones of that was this terrible ad campaign from Dove, which was, oh my God, Cien, it was so infuriating. I don't know if you saw this, but it was around your underarms. and like the appearance and like the skin quality of your underarm for like the Dove
Yeah.
deodorant. And it's like literally not a single person has worried
Cared.
about the
Yeah.
beauty of
Yeah.
their arm. Like,
Yeah.
fuck off. Like, so it got like taken down quite quickly. So just, I want to unpack what you just said there around, it started off kind of sounding like financially it's enabling these more cost-effective solutions. So like we're saying there with like low ticket items, high ticket items, but then you sort of ended it with, if AI is coming for our jobs, so is it the problem or the solution?
I think it's both. So, and we talked about this before. There are real world examples of millions of people losing their jobs, whether that's in customer service, in marketing, in even like accounting, like a lot of admin stuff.
Yeah.
You know, we have seen how AI has replaced a lot of these jobs in reality. So we know that it's true, that it will displace a lot of jobs. I also think that there's especially in the first world countries, I don't know what the right term is for that, but especially in first world countries, there is a big existential crisis. Because of, you know, what we spoke about before. We've measured ourselves against how much we were producing, and how smart we are. So we were all like, oh my God, Einstein is the best because of his IQ, or, you know, like these people are, and we've got powerful people being able to mass produce whatever, and they were great. And whoever, you know, takes income because they were able to produce or because of their smarts performed well. But now with AI, now we're seeing that it is possible for it to be, you know, almost as smart as us or smarter than us in the future, and robots being able to produce more than us. What does it mean to be human?
Like literal game changer. I just wanted to just say on that, I heard you say that on a panel, which was just like, I loved how you phrased it. Human output or just human success, I guess, has always been measured by those two things. Just to underscore, because I just love what you said there, is our IQ and our productive output. And very much I've also banged on about, I'm so annoyed by things that we have in our daily life that's purely a hangover of the agricultural and the industrial revolution. And obviously we're now in this AI tech innovation evolution. So given that we were measured by our IQ and our productive output, what are we now being measured by in an era of AI?
No one's figured that out yet. I think that's why
you have.
Yes, we have.
You've got an answer to this. No one has but you.
Yeah. I do have a view on this, but before I give my answer, I think just connecting to the question that you had earlier, that's why I think humans now are in a mad rush to mass produce and maximize the potential, because we're on a race. Like, we're on a race. Like, oh, I'm going to, you know, like, whatever it means for me to be human, I need to then future-proof. So I'm going to build, I'm going to maximize. I don't know if I'm doing it right, but I'm just going to do it.
It's also, just really quickly on that, sorry to interrupt, but it's also a hangover from the dot-com boom.
Yeah.
Because they were latecomers and they missed out, exactly. Yeah. So now it's like, fuck, we don't want to miss out again.
Yeah. And my answer to that question is, what would it mean to be human? I think it goes back to the brand and connecting to the person, is, you know, in an ecosystem where machines will be smarter than us and produce more than us, what it means to be human is how creative we are, and the strength of the connections that we have in the relationships that we have. And I think that will never, that, you know, that brings us back to actually what being human means.
Oh, cool. I love that. This is what's so exciting. So let's define those two metrics: the creativity and the connection. And that does lead into the feminist and the case for women as well, which I'll try and keep a pin in that to come back to in a sec, because there's just so much here to touch on. Can you expand on the definitions of both of those, and specifically how we can still win and beat AI at both of those games? And I think specific, so again, creativity, connection. And what I'll add to that is the connection. I see that much more clearly, because I think that's showing up for people being a woman of your word, building that trust, like the creativity is, I think, where it's a bit more contentious. So I'd love to get your thoughts on those two.
We start on connectivity because it's more obvious.
Sure.
Like we're going to start buying from people and the products that they sell. So it's not going to be a brand that we're like, for example, a McDonald's or a what other brands are there? A Nike that we'll be buying from, but it's gonna be from like an influencer that we trust.
Yeah.
If they say that I buy this local produce, I'm gonna buy that local produce. That's how I see connectivity is gonna pan out. From a creativity perspective, I think some people might think I'm crazy, but this is definitely how I thought about this. So when we think about the art that we like, or luxury, it's usually the rare. Like we think that an amazing piece of art is something that's rare, or like something that is unique. Whether that was created by a person, or like right now, for example, some of the most expensive art is created by an AI, and that's because it's nascent and new. And in the time when everything is going to be created by AI, what's going to be rare? It's going to be human creativity. And I think we'll add more value to that. Again, that is my prediction.
Okay.
When everyone's going to be mass producing AI-generated music, AI-generated art, AI-generated food, what's going to be of higher value? What's going to be luxurious? It's going to be eating food by that was made by a human.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be commoditized. It's going to be cheap. It's going to be cheaper for things to be produced by machines because they can make loads.
What about quality? Because if AI robot is capable of producing something that's of a high quality, although it's less rare, where do we then place the value? Do we place the value on something that isn't as good, but it's rare and it was done with human hands, versus this perfect, high quality produced item?
Yeah.
I'm asking you hard questions.
Yeah, and I love it. Like, I think we're going like philosophical a little bit.
Yeah.
So whatever is commoditized, like whatever there's a lot, even if it's high quality, is going to be cheap. But that doesn't mean it's not high quality. Say, for example, rice, or, like all of these like good food, fruits. Yeah. If it can be mass produced, then it's going to be potentially cheaper than that can't be mass produced.
Sure.
And us humans as well, we're quite sophisticated in what we think is high quality. Sometimes I know a friend of mine, she likes odd ceramics. Like if there's some sort of oddness to how it was formed.
Yeah, I was thinking that exactly.
Yeah,
like an imperfection.
She would love that, and actually, if you go to some exhibits, they are more expensive than your perfectly made cup or bowl.
Yeah,
and I think it's the same. Like,
it's like manufactured, mass produced.
Yeah. But again, this is just my
I love it.
Crazy thinking.
No. That's what we're here. That's why you're on the show. I want to hear about it. Where my mind is, like, I'm coming at it also from the lens of, again, when I'm talking about creativity, I'm coming at it from marketing, advertising, and my current understanding of what AI is great at is the large input of data and then synthesizing it and then spitting out something else at the other end. And that's kind of that replicates a bit of, like, there's a processing, like transformation in there, and I'm just, I don't know, I think I'm still trying to like understand like how human creativity like can still have a place in the world of AI. And as much as, great example with your friend who loves these like oddly shaped handmade ceramics, but it's like, how many people appreciate that? And I think, again, going back to like ad land as well, for example, it's, I don't know, I just see how much better AI is getting, and I'm just still kind of curious as to where creative talent can succeed.
Yeah. The beauty is still in the eye of the beholder. Like us humans, we've evolved to like different things, and there's always that early adopter who would be like, oh, but I want this different thing. And then we got then followers that would want this different thing. And we've always wanted different things. We evolved that way. Right now, AI generated videos is huge because it's actually hard. It's not easy to prompt AI generated videos that can be sold or utilized for advertising. You still need the skills and the money to be able to produce a good, high quality AI generated video. You still need an editing team.
Yeah.
You still need someone who understands like camera angling.
Yeah.
Because you'll have to prompt these things. So it's not. So right now we like it because it's new and it's like, wow, it becomes aspirational.
Yeah.
I can do that. And then let's say 10 years from now when everyone can generate high quality videos, there's going to be that person who's going to be like, I made this with my entire hands, just me, analog. Someone's going to be like, wow, that is cool.
Yeah.
Because no one else is doing it.
Yeah.
And I think it's just natural for us
Yeah.
humans to like what's
new.
Yeah.
That does make sense. And I think also it's like we talk as well, we've seen all this online about using AI as the tool, and again in the creativity conversation it's like the co-pilot, and what you've just described there is you need the human originality doesn't exist, but you've got like the idea. What I talk about as well is creative professionals' place in an AI world is transferring over to becoming more taste makers. And I think there's a switch in job titles. So I'm sure you already know this, listeners, you probably do too, but the word computer used to be a job title. And guess what? It used to be mainly women. And it was kind of more of the secretarial, and it was basically kind of like a human calculator, like inputting the data. That was what a computer was. It's modern history, more recent times, where the computer is the object, not the thing. So my prediction is a similar evolution there, where now I know it's mainly like obviously entrepreneurial people listening to this, and I'm really kind of sticking with the creative thing, so hope that this still relates, but we've got like art workers, we've got graphic designers, maybe even like editors. We've got these certain job titles that I think the same thing will happen with the computer. I think that will now describe the tool, the object, and then back to your argument for the human creativity, it becomes the idea generation, setting that direction. And as I say, tastemaker, I think that's going to be the new job title, is you still need to, like with any tool, you still need to direct it, course correct, and QC it at the end. So, yeah, those are my takes.
No, from a creativity perspective, I think so. Like, in the last 3 days, I built 3 apps.
Wow.
Working applications, web apps, complete with
using
Auth-O.
LaunchLemonade.
LaunchLemonade and a couple other tools, like a full-blown applications.
Wow.
And I was just like, really, I was telling everyone. I was like, oh my God, like check this out. But then I was talking to another developer friend of mine, and I was saying like, I just can't. Everyone's gonna be building solutions or whatever they want. One of the ideas that I have, and you're free to steal this if you want, but one of the idea that I had was like a comic book generator. But then I was looking quickly, like 5-minute look at the competition. There was loads.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, what if I added like a bit of romantic twist, like a K-pop or manga meets, graphic novel, like dark generator. And I called it Synth City. And
love it.
And the app and then you would just have to choose like a character, and then you choose like a plot. And then the app would generate like a storyline and graphics.
Yeah. And
then you would then choose like if you want to proceed this way or that way. It was so easy to build. But as my friend pointed out, he was like, well, if you found it easy to build, but if you don't know how kind of like the back end works or like how journey should be, because of your years of experience building journeys and understanding how customers behave with technology, you were able to do it like that. And I was like, yeah, fair point.
I love that you touched on this, because this is the perfect segue away from like the pure like creative industry into entrepreneurship. Just before I move on with that, you remind me of like the car analogy as well. And this is something else I talk about, which is, if there's a live audience, I ask people to raise their hand if they've got a driving license and they know how to drive, and it's like most of the room. And then ask them the inner workings of a combustion engine, and it's like no hands are raised. So I guess that's actually more of like, I don't know if it's like a counterpoint to what you just said, but you just made me think of it anyway, which is like, we don't need to know the inner workings. We're not mechanics. Like, being able to drive the car doesn't mean that we are these like automotive experts. But I guess what you're saying there is like, there is still at least that understanding that like this pedal triggers like the accelerator to then go faster. Like, you still need, I guess that's the question, like, how much do we actually need to understand of how much these inner workings work in order to be able to use it properly?
So my background is product delivery. Like, I can read code, but I haven't coded in forever. But because I worked with a lot of development teams and design journeys, studied user behavior, talked to a lot of customers, understand what they, button placements or landing pages, value proposition or problem solving, validation, of all of these things that I am an expert of, because I've done it so many times, that I am then quickly able to translate in a technology that I could just prompt. But I won't be able to prompt it or design it to perform in such a way if I didn't understand. Similarly to, like, let's say a nutritionist. I've never, I've explored building my own, it would basically produce like an exercise plan for me, but I really don't have a deep understanding of nutrition. So it's, a tool that I'll be building around nutrition is not going to be effective. Like, I wouldn't know how to market it. I wouldn't know how to talk to people about nutrition, or what elements in this nutrition application would I be building, because I'm not an expert in nutrition.
But I guess more as a user. So I guess what you're saying there is, like, obviously to build out a product and a business around it, there needs to be enough knowledge for you to be able to like promote it properly, which I get. But even just continuing with that great nutrition analogy is like, I'm also not a nutritionist, but the way I see businesses, they either fall into one of four categories. One is you have the train tracks, and this is in the context of tech and AI, is you literally own the LLMs, you have developed the models yourself, it's proprietary, so you've got the open AIs of the world. Those train tracks, on top of those, you've got the LaunchLemonades, which you can use to build and like have the train on the tracks, right? I mean, being as close as possible to the actual foundation is the best place to be. Like, we'd rather be Sam Altman, but it's still a good place to be, right? Like, building on top of those. You've then got I need to come up with a better analogy for this because I'm taking it from different places. It's a bit of a like pastiche, but you then got like the picks and shovels type businesses, which comes from like the coal mines. So you've got the stuff like around that, and then you've got selling the sawdust, which is a different thing. So coming back to what you're saying, I guess kind of coming back to that question of like, how much do we need to know about the inner mechanics of a car in order to be able to drive? I guess, like, are you saying, like, the more you know, the better, and the closer you are to those train tracks and the fundamentals?
When we say no more, I think there's also a big misunderstanding of the market, because, the market doesn't have the time to learn.
Exactly.
We don't have the time, the mental capacity. And so what I mean by learning more, I don't mean learn to code. I don't mean, learn how the data inside the LLM is transformed,
right?
Or I don't mean you understand like
how
deep
data
learning.
Servers, yeah.
I just mean use it every day. I just mean try to build things, read up a little bit. Maybe read a book. 3 years ago, that's when I started really deep diving into AI, as in Gen AI and LLMs, and I just read books every day. I would every time I'm on the train or walking, I would just like be reading
Yeah.
something that was around generative AI.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. It's just like make the time to just immerse yourself in it.
But what is the benefit? Because as you say, there is so much that we can learn, and you're naturally interested in that, and you've now become this amazing AI entrepreneur. But for anyone who's thinking of just utilizing it as a tool, how would that benefit them? Because again, if we use the nutrition example,
Yeah.
I don't need to be a nutritionist. I can just kind of the synthesized
Yeah.
output
Yeah.
of protein is good. I need to get more protein in my diet. Some carbs is good for energy, and
Yeah.
I
No.
don't need to understand the science behind it.
I like that. I like that question, actually. You just build better products. So if you don't know about hallucination and how to solve for it, if you don't know how to test it for bias and detect potentially alienating some customers because of how an AI responds, and you won't be able to fix it. That simple example is very important. Or if you don't understand the different types of data, whether personal. So a lot of people are shying away from AI because they're like, what about my customer data? But you don't even understand what the differences in the data are. Like, you can actually redact personal identifiable information and still utilize it responsibly.
Yeah, great answer.
Yeah.
Knowledge is power. That's actually something that my dad really instilled in me when I was younger. Just like knowledge is power. The more you know, the better. And you've just made me think as well about the ridiculous trial with Mark Zuckerberg in the States years ago, and where you've got these male, pale and stale, like dusty old people who don't even know what they're asking. Like, we're not even talking about AI here, we're just talking about they don't know how the internet works. So it's kind of like, educate yourself. You're going to operate in this space. And I think part of that is overcoming the fear and the initial like hesitation and oh my god, like this language terminology. We'll touch on the finance connection as well, but you talk about this too with like financial language, financial terminology. There's all of these unfamiliar terms that just make people scared, which is exactly what the powers that be want you to react like. But when you just, we were saying this earlier, right, with just like unfamiliar names and terms, it's like when you get over that and you actually learn, like none of it's rocket science, like compound interest, inflation rates, like it's not, it sounds intelligent as I say it out loud, but it's really not.
Yeah.
So would you say the same applies to the world of learning about AI?
Absolutely. Like, so I was in fintech, and I knew so little about the world of investments. I realized it just before COVID. I was like, because I was earning, in a lot for compared to how much I was earning before. And so I started, discovering about, I started considering savings, but then it just didn't make sense. Like, interest rates was just like, I'm not going to create generational wealth. Not that I'm planning to have generations after me, or I'm not going to be able to like ever buy a mansion like Beyonce with savings. Like, and then I started opening myself up to, investing, trading, and started to understand what that world means. Read books, literally annoyed all of my friends and people that I knew who were already in there. Because like my parents were both in the Philippines, or Filipinos. They also come from humble beginnings, very poor families, and then they were able to make it up. But how I was taught, especially by my mom, is to save, and my dad is to invest in property.
Yeah.
And so the first thing that I did, the minute I got money, I was like, oh, property. I'm going to buy property in the Philippines. Then I was like, what am I going to do with this property? Like, what happens with property? And then I just realized, I was like, I know nothing about wealth generation or like wealth building. And so that's when I started understanding that there's a massive gap. And I did loads of interviews with couples for a startup that I was part of before, where I realized that a lot of women were saving, and then if they get divorced, they end up with nothing. And then usually the men invest, and they're more they're wealthier when they get divorced, and then we also have a problem now where the younger generation still ask from their parents and their grandparents who are left with nothing when they retire, and it's because there's that gap of understanding that you can build wealth, you can make investments. There's so many opportunities for you to just invest £200 a month and get returns in 20-30 years to be able to retire profitably. But
so let's connect that to your mission with AI and making sure no one gets left behind, especially women. So let's have a big juicy feminist rant and go for it.
So there's gonna be a big economy gap between those who are able to maximize the potential of AI now versus those who aren't. Similarly to what happened with the .com. Yeah. And I don't want that to happen, especially for women. We have worked so hard to have what we are having now. And it's not even enough. And we're just starting to learn about investments. There's only a handful of people that I know that talk about finances that are women. Yes, they're great, but it's not enough. Are we just going to wait 10 years from now and say, well, we want AI literacy as well? No, I think, we shouldn't have the responsibility or the onus on us, but we're just going to have to take it. We're just going to have to take it and make it our own as well.
Do you think that given human success is going to be redefined... Sorry, let me start that again. Given humans will be measured according to their connectivity and creativity, going back to that before, as opposed to their IQ and their productive output, where do you think women stand? Do we stand to gain more as generally being better at those things?
For sure. So going back to one of my earliest points, people will be buying from people and the brands that we build. Some of the biggest AI personalities that I love, Ali K. Miller, Sabrina Romanov, Brand Nat, and there are a couple of guys, but most of these brands that I trust that can teach me about AI are women. And I trust them. They they make it really understandable. They make it very accessible. They're inspirational as well, aspirational too. And so I'm buying from them. I'm like, yes, I want to learn from these people too. And I think women are doing great at that, or building our brands as a trustworthy brand, as teachers. And I think that's where we can be really powerful.
What advice, practical steps would you give to any female listeners in the AI space now? What can you're saying about, so with both learning and implementing, so are there any particular books you'd recommend, or anything similar in terms of knowledge? And then what are some other practical steps they could do to get their feet wet in the AI game?
Yeah. So it depends on kind of the level or the depth that you want to
Let's
explore.
say beginner to mid.
So with beginners, definitely loads of social media accounts to follow.
Okay.
I also post weekly videos on my YouTube channel.
What's the handle so people can go and find you?
It is LaunchLemonade. So youtube.com/LaunchLemonade. And I post videos on how to build AI tools. But there's also, like I said, on Instagram is Brand Nat. She talks about different types of AI tools. Ali K. Miller has, worked in the AI space for ever, and she is a leading voice, literally LinkedIn's top AI LinkedIn voice or something like that.
Wow.
Ali K. Miller is great, and there's Sabrina Romanov as well. She sold her company, was it last year, a couple years ago, Forbes 30 under 30,
which is not a great game to play.
I know,
anymore,
true. That is true.
But no, that's great for her.
She exited her AI company.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So impressive.
At $10 million.
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah. Kyle Baumer as well, who's a friend of mine, is also talks about how to become an AI consultant. So there's so many channels that you can explore, including mine, which are all free. But there's also Google has a course that's free. NVIDIA, if you want to go medium to a more deeper understanding of AI, NVIDIA, Hugging Face has courses. And actually, when I started learning Python, like if you want to fine tune models, Code Academy has a good Python course, and it's like $99 a year.
Wow.
Yeah, there's
Okay, amazing. That's loads. Wow, fantastic. Loads of fantastic resources. No excuse really, is there? There's all of this, like these amazing teachers, educators, courses and things. Sounds like quite an accessible price point as well. I put a pin in before. I think I put a pin in a few things because the conversation's gone in so many great directions. One that I just want to take the pin out of is coming closer to entrepreneurship. So before I was kind of coming at more from the creative angle. Let's get it back to like founders, entrepreneurship. What I loved so much that you said, if we rewind for a sec, is how like you've spun up a few apps recently, which is awesome. And we're talking about AI as a tool and how it can be used and like practical, like as app builders and stuff. I'm sure you'll agree with me on this. One of the biggest mistakes that I see entrepreneurs make, or especially like first-time founders, entrepreneurs, people who are thinking about it, is putting the idea or the solution first. There's also just way too much of an emphasis on like the idea and like coming up with like something no one's ever thought of before and like unique or whatever. But it's kind of like we're in a vacuum, we're in an echo chamber, we're sat by ourselves, like maybe during the ad break on Dragon's Den and like, oh, what could I come up with, right? And I'd love to just hear your thoughts on your really unique stance as a user of AI, an early adopter of AI as a tool to build these things, an AI entrepreneur, and you mentioned your background as a product manager and like validation and everything. So I think I'd just love to get your thoughts more on, but basically before listeners get all overexcited and think about, oh, how I can use AI to build something, is actually going back to that fundamental of like, what customer need are you serving and what's the value that you're adding in the marketplace?
Absolutely 100% agree with you, but I think it's evolving.
Yeah, okay.
So when it was expensive to build an experiment, definitely talk to customers first. If the route forward for you is needing an investment or needing a lot of money and runway to be able to build an MVP, definitely talk to your customers first and validate if that idea is going to be something that people will adopt. But now you can launch an idea with £0. You could, like put a landing page using card.co, or build like a custom GPT. Like you could have a monthly subscription on ChatGPT or LaunchLemonade and build like a tool and see if people would utilize it, collect the data. So now I think there's a bit of I'm encouraging a little bit of a reversal. And
Really
that's exactly what we did at LaunchLemonade. So when we had the idea, we were like, it's so cheap to just launch this like simple thing and let's see if people use it. And instead of like spending hours and waiting to build, let's kill this idea right away by building this thing. And if people don't use it, next project.
Cien, I was so excited to have you on here for many, many reasons, but like this has also just helped prove like why I was so excited to get my teeth stuck into this conversation with you, because you're actually speaking to my heart there as well. Not to contradict what I was just saying, but I'm such a big believer in like trusting people's actions more than their words. And that goes across everything in life, right? Friendships, relationships, customers, entrepreneurship. And so that's actually a kind of score for you on that sense, because by putting something out there that's so low cost, that's so low risk, you're actually getting much more of a faithful representation of whether anyone bites on it, right?
And you get to develop skills like marketing, repositioning, putting yourself out there. You just gain a lot by just doing.
Really interesting. Yeah, I've always done that. And I think I also mentor on this fantastic MBA program, and there's so much emphasis that's put on the customer interviews, the market validation, like which is great. Makes sense.
Makes
right?
sense. Yeah, like 100%. Oh, just to clarify as well, I did hundreds of interviews after we put the MVP.
Yeah,
so we were validating, but we were getting the feedback.
Love that.
So we still talk to our customers, definitely.
You're still getting validated, but you're doing it based on something that's actually out there. It's not just the hypotheticals.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that. Yeah, super interesting, because what we've had to do is just these other forms of MVP once you've collected some of that data. So a lot of it is just like landing pages
Yeah.
and like pretending like this thing actually exists
Yeah.
and having the mock-ups
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
oh no, we've sold out, or join the wait list kind of thing. But as you said, if it's so low risk and there's no money involved in putting it out there, you may as well just put it out there.
Just do it
and see how they react.
Get the data right away. Need traction, get the data right away. The old way worked because we needed teams. We needed someone who understood the market, did the SEO, did understand the, create the value proposition and build the product. We needed to make the right decisions, because it was gonna cost us a lot. But now I could make easy mistakes because it's so cheap.
Yeah. It reminds me also, like, I started my career actually in the print world, and it's funny because like whenever there was any like artwork to go to print, we'd get what's called wet proofs, so like physical printed, and they'd get couriered to the client to physically, I mean, I'm not a dinosaur, it's not even going back like that far, but they'd have to, I mean, granted it was in a traditional industry, but they'd have to physically sign the wet proof. Because like once you, especially if it was a lithographic press, where it's like, once those plates are made up and it's going on the press, like it's going to cost you thousands, if not tens of thousands, to do a reprint. And obviously with digital, it's like, oh, we can just make an edit to the landing page. And so it's kind of like this on steroids, the next version of that with entrepreneurship, product development, which is so, so interesting. Okay, I've got a load of other questions I want to ask you. I also want to hear more about agentic AI. So that's kind of the next buzzword, building on kind of AI in general. This is what LaunchLemonade is. So agentic, for anyone who hasn't heard of it, apologies if you already have, but like it comes from the word agent, right? Agent, which LaunchLemonade is. I want to hear more about this because I think I've said to you before, I am much more interested in getting help with the doing. I don't need
the thinking.
I don't need, sometimes it's helpful. Sometimes I'm kind of like, okay, I'm looking at the blank page, and especially for my public speaking and talks and stuff, I'm like, I need to come up with like a really clickbaity title or something. So I use ChatGPT as a bit of a sparring partner. But other than that, it's like, I'm capable of writing. I'm capable of coming up with this stuff. So for me, the doing is much more helpful. And there's like LLMs and LAMs. So tell me a bit more about either what LaunchLemonade can do or other tools in the actual like doing of the process, and not just ChatGPT spitting out more text.
Yeah. So first of all, the LaunchLemonade is an agent builder platform, so anyone can build their agents that will do or think. It depends on how you design it, but it still needs your frameworks, your knowledge, your skills that you embed or that you input in the instructions. And we have like what we call core memory. So each of the agent that you build would have a core memory, and it could have the ability to remember long conversations as well. It would have the ability to reflect as well if you design it to, and it would have the ability to search the internet as well if you wanted it to. So you still have to build it. It's going to be, so we envision it as a factory of AI agents where anyone can build. So imagine 50% of the world's websites are on WordPress. That's going to be the same. Like in LaunchLemonade, everyone can build their websites. Everyone can build their AI agents. And you decide what the doing is going to be, whether it's going to be responding to your emails, whether it's going to be summarizing newsletters that you receive, whether it's going to be putting together social media content and then pushing it out maybe in a Google Drive for a client to see. You design the agent. You design the agentic. And we call it agentic versus agent. So just for the your audience, when we talk about an AI agent, we scholars or like the kind of the experts in the field usually refer to, like, they mean the autonomous agent. Like you give it a goal or you give it you give it a goal or a task, and it would perform end to end. It would decide which product to take or which things to integrate depending on that goal. So it's going to be completely autonomous on how.
Could you give us a quick example of like a fully autonomous like task it could carry out?
Like sell driverless cars. So you give it like, oh, I want to go to this, and then it would just drive you. That could be a version of autonomous AI. Agentic AI, it's more designed. So you have to glue things up so that it would perform the task, and there's still a kind of like a human element to it. Like you still I have to, like, let's say when I design my agents, I like to proofread before I publish. I like to edit it a bit. But it is able to perform a task based on my instructions and based on how I've designed it to perform, to either publish a blog or whatever.
Sure. And I feel like in this part in the conversation, I need to address like some of the fear mongering. And there's a few words there that I feel like some listeners might easily like brings up a bit of the Black Mirror. You're saying about like factories of agents and like being able to send off emails and like more and more control that we're giving AI. Can you share any reassurances to some of those potential fears?
I think we have to reassure ourselves because and we have to give ourselves the responsibility in designing these, and that's why I encourage people to influence how these things are developing as well and understand how we're building things. So for example, I designed a customer service agent, just really simple instructions, and I fed it all the web pages of LaunchLemonade. I give it also links, like if a user asked a specific question, give my Calendly link. And so you could call it literally and ask, how do I build my first AI agent, or what language models are available on your platform? And it would answer. And it would answer questions if it has it in the knowledge or if it was able to remember previous conversations of other customers. That's a completely autonomous agent. But I designed it. I tested it for hours and hours, days and weeks. And I still haven't rolled it out, actually, just to a few paths. But the responsibility is on me.
So it's like all the more reason to get involved because the fear is keeping you further away from it. The more fearful you are of something, the more you're pushed away.
Yeah.
Which means the worse it's going to be. It's like often fear is worse than the thing itself, isn't it? Like if we've ever been in fearful situations or we've been anxious about something and we've had to like put our big girl pants on and go and sort it out, it's never as bad as that anxiety beforehand.
The unknown.
Right?
Yeah.
And at least with what you're saying is like getting involved, not only are you overcoming that fear. Do you know what's really interesting actually? I have been to a few AI conferences, I spoke at some as well, and even around the actual conferences, I put out some polls and things on social media. And I was really curious to gauge the levels of optimism with these different crowds. And the more knowledgeable, I mean, I guess it's super obvious now, like saying in hindsight, but the more knowledgeable people were, there was a direct correlation with how optimistic they were feeling about it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Makes sense.
I'm just reminded of this quote or formula that got me through a lot of hardship, actually. And it is, fear plus reflection equals growth. And I think there's a version of that in terms of like how we deal with the uncertain. Because we're uncertain of something, we fear it. But actually how you overcome, or at least kind of like live in the fear, is to, sit on it, reflect on it, but also expose yourself to it.
Exactly.
And it will result to growth.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great saying. Where does that come from? Do you know?
This guy, like, he's a popular podcaster as well, the monk who got in trouble for apparently he was never in India or something. He was never traveling.
Not Jay Shetty?
Yeah. No, is it Jay Shetty? No.
He's like the only famous monk that I know.
I forgot his name,
No
but
worries.
he's really popular.
He's got like black curly hair.
Yeah.
Like blue eyes.
Yes.
Yeah, Jay Shetty.
Yeah.
If it's the same, he's English.
Is he English?
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought he was American for some reason.
Yeah, I think he lives in America.
Okay.
I think he's big over there.
Yeah.
So yeah, that could be him. Okay, cool. How about your founder story?
We should probably remove them.
Yeah, don't worry. I'm gonna have to clean up a bit of this because like my question, I'm aware that I've been really waffly with like my questions and stuff. So this is the beauty.
Yeah, I know.
Although having said that, I feel like this is the sort of raw, honest transparency that like people will, because otherwise then it's like, oh, shiny perfect podcast. Do you know what I mean? And it's like there's that human.
I've loved it. Yeah.
But don't worry, I'm gonna try and sort it out. Yeah, don't worry. This is the beauty of this. Let me just while we're doing this, then let me just check time. Okay, perfect. It's literally an hour.
Oh,
perfect.
wow.
Before we wrap, I want to make sure we've covered loads of ground. Although I could definitely talk for much longer, but I don't want to keep listeners for too long. I'd love to hear a bit more about your founder story as well. So you mentioned a little bit about starting up with Launch Lemonade, your career history. Tell me fully kind of the story and kind of how it started.
Yeah, so when I was a little girl and actually no, probably my teens, because when I was a little girl, people asked me what I wanted to be. I was either going to be a doctor, a writer, or a painter. But then as I learned about like philosophy and romanticism and Nietzsche and all the morbid stuff, really.
Love it.
If when someone asked me what do you want to be, like, like it's, you need to decide. My answer was like, I just want to be great. Like I can't imagine doing the same thing forever. And so in my 20s, I decided to travel. I lived in China, I lived in the States, and then I moved here. And I decided not to pursue any career in my 20s. And then the minute I hit 28, I was like, all right, it's time for us to think about what we really want to do. And I really wanted to do digital marketing, and then I wanted to do product delivery. And so I was very clear about like experiencing and learning different skills. And that's ultimately led me to kind of this whole world of AI. Is there's so many skills that if you understand, culture, people, how digital transformation works, how marketing works, how data works, you can build anything. And that's what got me
That
here.
makes complete sense. And then more practically with setting up Launch Lemonade, have you got any funding yourself, or how did you practically get started?
Yeah, going back to the cheap build, we've completely self-funded ourselves. We bootstrapped. We are going to be fundraising soon to achieve our vision of being the marketplace for AI agents. And yeah, it's going to be an exciting year for us.
Exciting. When are you thinking of launching the fundraise?
It's going to be in the early spring, maybe late winter, and then closing in early summer.
Okay, fantastic. Well, if there's any like links to pre-register or anything,
Yes.
I'll pop those in the show notes, because
Absolutely.
that's really exciting, and I'm sure loads of people would love to back not only you as an entrepreneur and a woman in AI, but also the actual value proposition of Launch Lemonade. It's really exciting. It's obviously inevitable, but you're really kind of going about it in the right way. So I can't wait to hear when that opens up. Final traditional closing question. The show's called Strategy and Tragedy because often the best lessons come from the biggest mistakes. What is one tragedy that's taught you an unforgettable lesson, Cien?
I had a manager before. This must have been, I don't know, maybe 10 or, I don't know, many years ago. And she pulled me aside and opened a notebook. And then in the notebook, she drew a graph with an X and Y axis. And then she said on the X axis, like, this is where a great manager is. And then like lower and lower as the axis progressed, like, and this is where a good marketeer is, and this is where a good writer is. And then she literally drew a circle outside of the notebook. And her notebook was huge. It was a huge notebook. And then I was just like, I honestly didn't know what to say. I mean, I'm still thinking about it now. It was like the most horrendous moment of my career. And I just didn't understand how, it was, I thought that it was me. Like, I am awful. I was working in the UK, and I was like, oh my God, like all of the, I felt like I was terrible.
Of course.
And I cried. Like,
Wow.
I was miserable. I was depressed. Like, it really, pushed me to depression.
Yeah.
And I was like, I had to see like a therapist after that. I believed her, and I think that was the biggest mistake that I did.
Oh my God, Cien. I think I'm so empathetic that when I hear the answers to these questions, I'm like, I'm there feeling the pain of the guests when I'm there in the story, and I'm feeling that there. This is where I'm like clutching my stomach and like reacting in this way because I'm feeling that. That felt like a punch in the stomach to me just listening to it. And what's interesting, Cien, is there have been a lot of common answers to that question. And one of the most common ones is actually taking care of yourself, like health-wise. I've never had one like that before. That's an amazing... I mean, I'm obviously so sorry that that's happened to you. But I'd love to hear more about what you've taken from that and the lesson there.
Yeah, I believed her, and I worked my ass off to kind of get everyone's confidence back, but it destroyed me. Like I ended up working so hard, and everyone else around me, there were her kind of like on her level, people started believing her, but everyone who I was working with, like, they were cheering me on, and but I was like, I'm gonna prove these people wrong, but I just never got anything right with her specifically. And so I left the company. I was just like, I can't be in this space anymore. Like, and they were, and they like, they kept me, like, they put me under, she was actually, I was there first, and then she joined, put me under probation, and I worked my ass off. Like, I would just work so hard. And then got a lot of really cool projects out, proved how effective my stuff were. But then I got to a point where I just couldn't.
Cien, it's such a nasty thing for that person to have done. It's genuinely such a nasty thing. And I think the biggest, whilst it's fantastic that you've taken such a great life lesson there, which is like believing in yourself and not kind of letting somebody else sort of make you believe that you're something that you're not. But I think the biggest lesson there actually needs to go to that person and other managers, and how, like, what do you expect to get from people when you treat them like that? Obviously anybody would feel like absolute shit. Like, and are you going to get the best out of people doing that? Definitely not. Never. So I feel like the wind's really taken out of me with that, because I would be the same. I'd probably go and get therapy afterwards as well. It's horrible.
I did.
That sounds horrible.
Yeah.
Like, God.
Proper therapy.
Yeah.
All types of therapy. I had a life coach, I had a therapist. I went through CBT.
Yeah.
It was just like, I
don't blame you.
It was the first time that's ever happened to me, and I was like, I'm awful. I shouldn't be here. I can't compete.
Of course, yeah.
But, like, I've always been the type of person who's like, I'm going to prove people wrong. Even though I was depressed, I was sure. Just keep pushing.
Yeah. And sometimes as much as you keep pushing, you're never gonna change certain people's minds around you. Cien, I'm so sorry that you went through that. I feel like, that manager was definitely in the wrong there. Like, not only have you more than proved yourself at this point, but just what a way to go about motivating and getting the best out of people, right? Oh my goodness, terrible. All right, Cien, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been wonderful to sit down and chat with you. I hope listeners, I'm sure that you've learned something from this conversation. I certainly have. So this has been a bit selfish for me as well to like pick your brains. But yeah, Cien, so grateful for your time here today.
Thanks for having me again, Steph.
Thank you so much for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out, and we'll see you next time.